Hi, welcome to a new video, and in this one I'm going to let you know what I've finally made my mind up, my final pick for my everyday carry film camera. Now, you may have seen my video where I look at everyday carry cameras and talk about what I carry around in my kit bag, and my digital one, which is a Canon G15. And I really must do a video purely on the G15 at some point because it is a great camera and I do really like it. I find it as a digital everyday carry around really quite useful, and I will link to the video I've just mentioned up the top. Now, also, because I'm going to be talking in brief about quite a few cameras, most of which, in fact all of which I think I have reviewed previously, there will be links that pop up here on a fairly regular basis, depending on which camera I'm talking about. But let's run through the contenders in no particular order, and I want to talk about, very briefly, the pros and cons behind each one of them. Right, so the first one we're going to talk about is this, the Canon Dial 35-2. These are also sold under the Bell & Howell name as well, and are identical cameras. There was two versions of the Dial 35. This is the second gen. Takes a more easily available battery and improved slightly on the first one. Okay, so first of all, very briefly, the pros behind it. The first one is the rather inventive clockwork motor drive. Now, I would demo this, but there isn't a film in it, and these things don't fire without a film in them. Zone focus, controlled by the dial up on top just there. It is aperture priority, which you change by... Sorry, I tell a lie, it's shutter priority, which you change by rotating the shutter speed, which goes from a 30th up to a 250th, which is not a huge range on there, being perfectly honest. You can, by pulling this little black button at the front out, also then effectively turn it into a fully manual camera as well. So that gives you overrides on there, because that then allows you to select the aperture. So it's got a lot going for it in that regard, but why didn't it make it to my final everyday carry? Well, first of all, it is quite chunky, and considering it's got no flash on there, it is quite a hefty little beast. So you have that as a bit of a problem on there. They also require a bit of TLC to get them working. This clockwork mechanism in here, the grease can dry up, which requires you to partly strip out the clockwork section here, clear all the grease out, put some graphite in there to re-lubricate it and get it running, and it's a bit of a faff, so there are some reliability issues. It's also, and you can probably see that just there, actually a half frame camera. Now, that does give you the advantage that on a 36 roll of film you get at least 72 shots, but with the smaller neg you get the corresponding decrease in image quality as well. So for me, half frame combined with the bulk of the camera, it really didn't quite cut the mustard. That's not to say I don't absolutely love this thing. I do, and I will still take it out on occasions to shoot with it because of its wonderful quirky nature. But to carry around with me every single day, unfortunately not quite. Right, so our next contender is this. It's a Minolta Hymatic C. You can just about hopefully see that says Hymatic C just there. Now, one of the great things about this, it's ridiculous and childish, but I love it, is there's a little button and the lens pops out. It is entirely silly, but I do absolutely love the fact that it does that. This is a zone focus camera. So you can either focus manually, or you've got 3 zone scales on there. It's also similar to the Dial 35-2, a shutter priority camera, but it's only got 2 shutter speeds that you can select from, which are my memory, and check out the video to get the actual facts on this. If I remember correctly, I think it's a 30th and a 250th that you can select between there. No ability to manually override it. It is a full frame 35mm. And it's a nice little camera, really good little 40mm f2.7, and I like the focal length. The 40mm on there appeals to me. I really like that. But at the end of the day, what I found using it was just having those 2 shutter speeds was, particularly if it was a day where the lighting conditions were changing quite dramatically, it was a little bit limiting. So for that reason, it didn't quite make it. But it's a beautifully made camera with a really nice little lens on it, and again, one I really enjoy using. So it will be one that I use on a regular basis still, but again, not quite everyday territory for this. Next up, we've got one that I picked up quite recently, and that's a Vivitar 35EE. Now, this is an interesting one because it's, rather than being zone focus, it is actually a rangefinder. So it's got a tiny little rangefinder mechanism in there, and the rangefinder is actually really nicely bright and accurate. Full frame 35mm again, really nicely made. 38mm f2.8, so similar sort of focal length on that, and really nice shots come out of this thing. My main issue with this, more than anything, is the fact that it is fully automatic, so you're not getting any control over the aperture or the shutter speed on it, which is a bit of a shame, because I think had it had those, it would have ranked much higher. Not that there's any ranking in this, but it would have been a closer contender. But again, really nice camera to use, and you can pick these things up incredibly cheaply. They were sold under a variety of different names. This one's a Vivitar. I think originally they were Casinas, but check out the video on this one. These are actually a really good little first 35mm film camera if you're looking for something like that and you've never explored 35mm before. Cheap, readily available, good little lens on there, easy to use. And it's a rangefinder to boot as well. Okay, before we get to the grand unveiling of my pick, we have, and this is the runner-up, and it was quite a hard choice because I do really love this little thing, and that's my Minox 35EL. So, as far as the Minox goes, it is absolutely diminutive. It is one of the smallest full-frame 35mm cameras ever made. It's also got a 35mm 2.8 colour minotaur lens on it, which is a cracking lens. It really is a nice little lens. It's zone focus again, and aperture priority in this, with the choice of apertures from 2.8 up to f16, so a nice little camera to use, and you can even play around with the actual ISO to give you a sort of exposure compensation on there. Really nice, really easy to use, totally tiny, incredibly quiet shutter on it, as you can hear there. So really good stealth camera in that regard, and once you set it up for zone focus, it's great. So why didn't it quite make the cut? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is it's actually quite fiddly to use. You've got to get your fingers right in there to be able to use these controls, and it's not easy to use them on the fly because the only thing you get in the viewfinder is the shutter speed that's been selected for the aperture you've picked. So it can be a bit awkward to use in that regard, and because it's so tiny, it really doesn't like 36 exposure rolls of film. Now, it will take them, but what you find is once you get past about 25, 26 shots, the wind-on becomes incredibly stiff. And I have, because I've owned these over the years many times, I have on occasions actually torn sprockets because it does get quite tight in there. So you are definitely better off using 24 exposure rolls, but that's more expensive, it's a pain, so doesn't quite make it. But again, if I want to take a film camera out that nobody's going to notice, or is the least likely to notice, this is a strong contender. Plus, I just love them. Cracking lens as well. So, what came out on top? So what came out on top, actually it's, am I cheating here? It's two cameras, but I've picked one of them. But if you were looking for an everyday carry camera, I don't think you'd go far wrong with either of these. And that is the Olympus XA series, namely the original XA and the XA2. Now, I'm going to focus on the original XA. I will reference the XA2 as we go through because there are some key differences between them, but I do want to talk through both of them. But I'm going to focus on why this one is my pick as an everyday carry camera. So the key difference is between the two. This is a rangefinder, the XA2 is zone focus, this is aperture priority, the XA2 is fully automatic, and the lens on this one is slightly faster. So we've got a 2.8, so we've got a 35mm f2.8, will that focus? Hopefully, yeah, that looks like it did just there, whereas we have a 35mm f 3.5. I had to remind myself for a second there. Go and focus in. There we go. On the XA2. So there is a slight difference in terms of the lens. Now, the rangefinder I just think is slightly easy to use, but there is a zone focus option on there. You'll notice that if you have the aperture set to 5.6, it's in orange, and the 3 meter mark on the rangefinder is also in orange. Set those two up and you've effectively got a point and shoot in terms of that, and it will work from, I think, around about 2 meters up to infinity pretty well. Absolutely cracking lens on both. Now, some people argue that the lens on this is better than the one on the XA2. I wouldn't argue with that, but some people do say that the XA2 metering is better than the metering on here. I think that's marginal, but it was a newer model, so perhaps that is the case. Now, one of the other things I like about these is the flash units come off, which makes it eminently pocketable. And if you're out in daylight, this makes the XA and the XA2, one moment, not massively bigger than our Minox. I remember size was one of the reasons why I liked this. And the XA is very pocketable in that regard, but the flash units that come with it, that you can easily just pop in another pocket, making it very portable. It's powered by a single AA battery. In the case of the A9 and A11 flashes, there was an A16, which took 2 batteries, but adds considerably to the bulk. I personally think that the A11 is the best one of the lot. The flash results off of these I actually think are really quite good. They've got that certain harshness that you would expect from a direct flash being so close to the lens, but the metering and the exposure on it for a flash system this old is incredibly good. So overall, it's pocketable, it's kind of modular, it's got an excellent lens, it's got a semi-manual mode on it in aperture priority, it's a rangefinder, and it's very easy to carry around with you. So that, for me, combined with the images you get out of it, is why the Olympus XA is my everyday carry camera. That said, these are a lot more expensive than XA2s, and if an XA2 is what you can pick up, you're getting marginal gains off of this, and the XA2 is still a solid everyday carry film camera. So that's what works for me. Let me know in the comments down below what your everyday carry film camera is, and digital camera for that matter. Do you even carry one, or do you just use your phone? There are arguably no wrong answers to this. But that's mine. If you've enjoyed this video, please do hit the like button. And if you want to see more content like this, please do subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified when new content gets uploaded. Thanks very much, everyone. Take care. Bye.